The brain does not always know the difference between fantasy and reality. A study on stage plays versus motion picture showed that watching real people in front of you pretending to do something to the brain is nigh indistinguishable from watching the actual thing happen. A further study posits that, guess what? It's exacerbated by role-playing games, and why wouldn't it be? The whole point is to slip into the shoes of someone who's not you in one of the most immersive ways possible. In the tabletop community, there's a phenomenon we call bleed. It refers to something happening in-game that affects you, the player, in real life. This ranges from the abstract, my player character was seriously wounded or died. I care about my player character, they're a proxy for me, and so that hurts me emotionally, to the more direct. A fellow player character, or the DM as an NPC, said something that really hurt me. I feel like my friend betrayed me. A lot of us are playing remotely right now, and that means the normal tools that we use to humanize one another, like eye contact or even verbal speech, are off the table. The world is a complex mess right now. I'm sure you've had plenty of Facebook comment conversations where suddenly the other person's no longer a person. They just represent a cluster of opinions or ideals or thoughts that are the antithesis to what you are or what you want to be. I mostly run D&D for folks like me. And what that means is folks who have ADHD, who are autistic, who have bipolar, or OCD, or any number of attachment disorders. And folks like me have experienced pretty severe social isolation because of those factors. During social isolation, you tend to pick up a few regressive communication patterns. That's not exclusive to neurodivergent folks. Everyone has experienced the sensation of trying to say something, but it not coming out how they meant it or not being received how they thought it would. And it's very frustrating. These behaviors can present challenges, but we can overcome them together. An important part of this communication is remaining open. If someone presents a concern to you and says, hey, this thing that you're doing, this way that you're communicating makes me feel bad. If you shut down and get defensive, that's really not going to help anyone. Things are immediately going to get much worse. Actually hearing them, letting them know you hear them and that you're willing to come to a compromise without violence is key. Violence here does not mean Three Stooges head bonks or whipping out your butterfly knife. Violent communication means trying to threaten, coerce, judge, or guilt trip someone into behaving the way that you think they should. There's a big difference between saying, I hear you. It's hard for me to keep track of those behaviors you're talking about, but if we work out some kind of signal, I'll do my best to adhere to it. And, well, excuse me if I don't pay attention to every single little thing I say so you don't get triggered. In order to keep that from happening in our games with our friends, there are a few tools that we can use. I was raised in a home where we spoke over one another all the time. Guilt was the primary currency of communication. I'm still deprogramming that, and I probably will be for the rest of my life. So I use these tools every day. The first one is called Prologues and Epilogues. In a prologue to a session, think of it like a session 0 for every single game of D&D you run. You're just debriefing with your players. Hey, are you all okay? Is there something happening in your life that we should know about so we avoid certain subjects? Are you experiencing relationship tension or grief? Anything that we can accommodate to make the game feel better for you, to be the escape that it's supposed to be. During session epilogues, we catch all the things that we missed in the prologues. Hey, did something happen today that made you feel uncomfortable? Did something that I said or any of the other players put you in a situation that felt icky or bad? The next tool is just drawing boundaries of communication. Having a player character is not a blank check for violent communication. Dramatic tension is very, very cool. Personal tension is universally bad. If two player characters are rivals, competing for renown, affection, gold, whatever, that can be really cool. But if it devolves into violent communication between two player characters, the first part of that word, player, is gonna get hurt. Before you and another player enter into any kind of rivalry or character dynamic similar to that, it's important to establish boundaries. I've played with players who said, you can talk about bullying, but don't show it on screen. And that's understandable. Asking someone, could you not use profanity when talking to or about me like that because it feels like abuse, which is not your fault, it's something that I carry around with me. That's a really good boundary. That's a boundary that I actually have in the real world. And if a player feels like they can't adhere to that boundary, then there's no reason to pursue that character dynamic. In the games I run, like I said earlier, a lot of folks have ADHD, and a big part of ADHD is called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD for short. What that means is, even perceived rejection can leave physical symptoms. It can be actually painful. So if the neurotypical brain can hardly tell the difference between fantasy and reality when real people are acting it out, to the ADHD brain, multiply that times 1,000,000,000 and then square it. There's basically no reason to verbally berate or humiliate your friends in a game about wizards and flumps. And if you're feeling the need to do that, it's a good sign that there's some unresolved tension that needs to be taken care of away from the table. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that these tools come in handy. I've honed them through years of tragedy and triumph, and I'm sure that in 10 years they'll have evolved even more. I'll see you next time.